gents, gamers, and whatever the heck you are. It's Savage Bruski and my buddy Paddy back for podcast round deuce.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Well, I mean, I guess it's evening for us when we're recording this. I don't know when you're going to listen to it. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
3,000 years in the future, when the editing was finally complete, they released it at 2 a.m. because they could.
Because they could.
Well, as always, welcome. It's good to be back with you, Senior Paddy. We got some good news to go over this week. I think people are going to like this one.
Yes. Yeah, and of course it's super great to be with you again. I've just wanted to take another moment to express my gratitude that we actually made this happen and we're actually doing this. Two cool dudes meet on the internet and bam, podcast time.
Two dudes, one internet platform, no forum, no limits, no women. No, I'm just kidding.
No
women. Two dudes just like throwing it out, you know? No, I'm kidding.
Right. It's just an audio bachelor pad for tabletop gamers, which is cool. Not saying that women aren't allowed. I'd love to feel the warm and gentle caress of a woman once again, as my wife's probably like in the back room somewhere, like, oh my God, this guy.
Yeah, we need some civilizing influences. Consider this a now hiring ad.
Okay, so anyway, we digress.
Yeah, we digress a lot.
I've been hitting my low budget marketing super hard on Twitter because this weekend I'm working on it right now, the description and all of the publication options and widgets that I have to click through on biggeekemporium.com to upload my game Mutants, a D10 skirmish game on the post-Forsaken planet.
Yes.
So it's been a long time coming.
It has, and I am one of the lucky blokes who got to see this early and, you know, help with the quality process, help with the proofreading. And I can tell you guys, this is a really smooth, it is an intuitive rule set. Paddy, why don't you give them a little more of a taste, man? What's the deal here? What's this about?
So yeah, it's been a love child of mine for a long time. It's technically not the first game that I wrote. It was actually born of all of the rules that I had started writing. Kind of circling back to our first episode there, you know, I just started jotting a bunch of stuff down in one of those college ruled notebooks. And every time a rule just didn't fit, I tossed it into another notebook and it eventually became its own game. And that's what became Mutants. Been working on it for 5 or 6 years. The first time I play tested the first game was 3 years into writing and it was trash. And it went over a total overhaul to become the game that it is now. But if I can, I can read a little bit of like the back of the book, you know, the back cover.
Yeah, it's your baby, man. Whatever you're comfortable with.
I'll do it in the best movie man voice that I could do.
You heard it here, people.
Somewhere so far and away, a forsaken planet exists. The people there are having the time of their lives, even as they scrape by to keep them. They can't remember the civilities of brunch or the feel of space-age memory foam mattresses. They know the comfort of a hot barrel and the smell of sulfurite when their makeshift blaster racker has won them the fight. Mutants is a fast-paced skirmish game in which nomadic gangs of mutants roam the post-Forsaken planet in search of supplies to survive another day.
Bruh, who will survive? I just want to throw in an anime entrance there.
So yeah, it's meant for 2 and up to 4 players. I've play tested it with 3 players. I never got a 4th player, but it works really good at 3, so I imagine it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to get it up to 4. The core rules of it, actually, like the turn breakdown and how mutants fight is it's, let's see, 1 2 3 4 5. It's 5 digest size pages, so you know those are about half pages, but the book itself is 54 pages. All of the writing and art is done by me, and of course Bruski helped me edit and proofread it. I had some help from a couple of friends at at Sonicus Maximus and at Nap and Ginger on Twitter. You can find them. Sonicus makes games with Unity, and Nap and Ginger is working on Universium Mium, which is a tabletop games aid. Looking forward to getting in on the beta in that in April. But it is a super fast skirmish game. I think the fastest time that I played it with my brother, and the fastest time that I played it with my brother, who is very familiar with the rules, we played an entire game start to finish, to include all of the post-game experience points / injury rolls, in 32 minutes. And then with a total stranger who had never played the game before, we had a game totally finished in about 45 minutes. So I imagine the average player, you can play a game of Mutants in about 30 to 35 minutes, which personally I think is awesome, because then you're playing 4, 5, 7 games when you meet up with your friends, rather than barely making it through a slog of an attrition match. I tried really hard to make the game intentionally active. Both players are rolling opposing die rolls. So there's, one of the bigger complaints about some of the bigger box games and the bigger battle games is like, okay, now that my turn's done, I'm gonna go make myself a sandwich while you go take your turn. No, it's not quite like that. One of the other things that I did, I'm sure it's not groundbreaking, but as a hobby hero myself, painting miniatures, sometimes even sculpting miniatures from the ground up, or all of the kit bashing that I do. In Mutants, your model rarely, if ever, dies before they can activate. Even if your luck goes totally sour, 9 out of 10 times that model is going to be able to activate and make a meaningful impact during that round that they would have succumbed to their wounds. And it was supposed to show off that cinematic trope, where the guy's getting shot up as he runs down the hallway and he falls on the button that stops the bomb from going off, or the one guy's like, save yourselves, I'll hold him back. So that was one of the other things I wanted to put in there. And then of course campaign play, not necessary, but the very last chapter of the book gives you rules so that way you can level up your mutants, give them more mutations, make their vitals better. You can even build base camps and upgrade the base camps. And then a couple of optional rules. So I'm just super excited. And if I haven't said this yet, the game is going to be free. That's absolutely correct. $0.00, because I am a pauper gamer who doesn't have a whole lot of extra income. So I wrote this game as a passion project, and I'm giving it away for free to all those kids out there, all those adults out there, just the people who have always wanted to take a foray into tabletop gaming, but didn't have a whole lot of time, a whole lot of free time, I should say, or a whole lot of money. The game doesn't take long to play, and it takes zero money to buy in, especially if you already have miniatures.
Oh yeah. I was going to jump in with one of the things I thought was going to make this really attractive to newer gamers, newer players, guys who haven't necessarily been around the block, as long as you or I have. It uses a really intuitive system. Terrain-wise, you're really just working in almost like tiles, and you don't have to go crazy on these, modeling the heck out of them. You definitely can, and that presents other opportunities, but it's just like, okay, it moves, model moves a tile. If there's a wall there, you can't move through it. It's really add water and mix on the level of not making it so complex that you get bogged down in role play instead of enjoying the gameplay. And that, to me, was one of the bigger things that made this very, very gamer friendly, very, very user friendly. And seriously, hats off to you on that among other details. There are other gems. I'm not going to get in and spoil it, but this is one to jump in on. You really can't go wrong playing this. You're not going to have a hard time jumping in, and you don't need oodles and oodles of miniatures at all.
Right. I think the biggest mutant gang size is gonna clock in at 7 miniatures, and the smallest mutant gang size is gonna be 3.
And yeah, these could be, you can use suitable models. You can definitely customize it as your heart's content. You can go that level of complexity and detail, but you could literally go to the dollar store and get a bunch of army men.
Yes, you could.
That's roughly the scale we're talking. If you have nothing else going, you're like, okay, good. I'm going to spend like $1 and I'm good to go. Paper plates. There's your tiles. Army men. There's your mutants. It's, oh my God.
Right. And don't even stop there. You could even go so easy as to go on Google and search your favorite sci-fi pictures, toss them into Google Docs sheet or whatever. And if you scale them just right, print them out, you could even just use paper miniatures and put those on the board as well. Yeah, paper dolls will work perfectly.
Paper doll game. Absolutely.
So that's one of the things that I actually wanted to work on was putting out a couple of sets for people who that's the route they wanted to go, was to make some paper miniatures. Doing some doodles of some typical mutant citizens you'd find on the post-Forsaken planet, and then releasing those also on BigGeekEmporium.com.
So not only are we going to have mutants probably, very shortly after, we're going to have some DLC to look forward to, in other words.
Yes. Like I said, by way of the paper miniatures, but I'm also kind of a sucker for telling stories. I've been like we talked about in the last episode, been the forever DM for a super long time. And one of the things that I want to do with mutants going forward is to publish scenarios. And this was kind of inspired by the Company of Iron scenarios you'd find in No Quarter Prime. They were games of 3 to 5 Company of Iron games, and each one of them had a progression where if somebody won or someone lost, they would get different bonuses or negatives leading into the next game. So there's going to be a little bit of that, and those ones will come with different mutant themes, with different mutation types, different rare and uber rare loot, like named weapons that exist within the lore. There's a project that my wife Kitty and I are working on. We want to do a little bit of a radio drama, kind of in the vein of the Breachside broadcast, if you're familiar with Malifaux and weird miniatures, Tales of Malifaux. Super fun. Our listeners, if you haven't listened to it, go find Weird Miniatures Tales of Malifaux. I can't remember if it's of Malifaux or from Malifaux, but it's a great radio drama show, and I love listening to it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited for you. It's your baby, but I'm excited for you.
You're like one of those uncles that shows up with all the really cool gifts and like has all the really good lessons for the child.
You're too kind, man. I'm glad to help. I'm glad to have provided any help, whether it's just proofing, inspiration. If you took some stuff off my channel, I mean, that's what I did it for. So I'm glad to see that come into fruition on your end.
But yeah, so that's kind of what I've been up to. It's what I'm currently working on. I'm gonna put a couple of minutes into it as soon as we get done with the podcast, and hopefully it'll be on BigGeekEmporium.com not too long after we finish recording this. So
we're talking 24 March. Check your browsers, fracture your thumb on the refresh button. It will be there, ladies and gents.
That is correct.
And I will I'll primarily, I'm putting these up on YouTube and Rumble for the time being. I am looking for other places to put these podcasts, but I will have a link in the description so you can just go right to Mutants and check it out for yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely like Rumble as a podcasting platform because they allow you the audio to stream even when your phone screen is turned off.
Yep.
Which that's a premium thing you have to pay for through YouTube. So
Yeah.
I mean, I like it. It makes sense for podcasting purposes. Like I said, I mean, especially it's a lot nicer on the wallet.
Oh yeah, and that is a function that is, I'm not going to say annoyed, but has definitely been a downside to YouTube for a long time. Whether you're doing YouTube music or watching a podcast that someone has that's in video format. I mean, you have to have your phone open and on, and if you throw it in your pocket, then you're clicking some other video by accident. And I was pleasantly surprised that is not a thing with Rumble, and it's not too hard to use. To be honest, the first video I uploaded was our first podcast, and I'm learning the ins and outs of Rumble. I don't know, but I'm just throwing it up anywhere I can. So far, I like the platform. It's a nice little tool, and I think I'm going to keep cross promoting on both.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to hit you up that because I think I might start uploading videos from the desk, just stream of consciousness while I'm sitting down painting. So you're going to see what I'm working on, and it'll just be me kind of narrating over the top of it. So yeah, that'll be fun.
Oh yeah. And if anything, I think Rumble lends itself more to that than YouTube does, because it doesn't, the thing I found is it doesn't have the same kind of deal with analytics. It doesn't have the same kind of deal with how it promotes content. It's just there. If you you kind of have to do your own work in that sense, and, put it up on your Twitter, put it up on your Facebook, put it up on your Instagram or whatever. Say, hey guys, check this out. But it's accessible and everybody can find it. That's the plus side.
And I think Big Geek Emporium is the same way. If drive through RPG is YouTube and Big Geek Emporium is Rumble, it's kind of the same thing. You put in your own work in order to actually drive traffic to your publications.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's an easy to use platform. Joe and Randy, they make themselves available to the people who publish to their platform. And as a burgeoning platform, it's not a bad idea to just get in on it too.
Totally. So yeah, link in the description, ladies and gentlemen. I will have a link over to Mutants, and you can check out the rest of. There's a ton more there. So obviously, do look around, have a gab, see what else there is to offer at BigGeekEmporium.com. But yeah, baby.
Oh yeah, I can make a show out of that. We'll put a pin in that for next week's episode. I'm gonna go over. These are a few of my favorite things.
Episode 3 reserved.
Done. So done.
Hell yeah.
That's Paddy news. What's right now is Adepticon, and Warhammer dropped some sexy stuff. If you want to lead us into that.
I absolutely will, and I'm gobsmacked that I'm saying this, because if you've been on my channel, if you've been on my socials, you know that I have kind of lost my enthusiasm and flame for Games Workshop, not because the lore or anything like that, but I think it's become a very different animal. I started off in 40K, and that was in 3rd edition. We're now officially, it's news, people. We are launching 10th. That gives you some idea how long we've been around and how much has changed. And even I, at the news, had to, stand, give a golf clap, applaud, not say rude things. And I was genuinely tempted to get back into this.
Well, and bringing Charles Dance in as one of the saviors of humanity in the form of Lionel Johnson, it wasn't a bad move on their part. If I could have the charisma that Lionel Johnson is just exuding in the model preview, even a year from now, I'd be happy.
My tweet, basically, and other people are jumping on this. Other people are noticing the similarity. The Lion has aged somewhat. He is not his young, youthful, brash self. He has aged somewhat, and he does resemble quite a bit something between, I forget the actor's name, but Davos Seaworth in Game of Thrones and Charles Dance, who played Tywin Lannister. Mm-hmm. But he's royally pissed. The stance, the sword, the walking, he's got 2 washers with him. He is coming for you. That is the gist of the model. And I gotta say, even reading, I felt a little bummed reading the Horus Heresy novels about the Dark Angels, because the Lion came off totally different than what you expected reading other lore over the years. I don't know if you got to read all those, Patty, but I was kind of like, I don't like them so much. But now, oddly, with this release, I think I see where they were going in the writings and what they were trying to portray. And I think it does them credit, if anything.
Well, I know as a surface level fan, somebody who only played for like a little bit, but getting that the 7th edition box set that had the Chaos Space Marines with the Dark Angels. I love the Dark Angels just from that set. The green armor, all of the wings motif. I mean, shoot, I think that box set even came with bikes too. So
yeah,
I was pretty sold with what was given to me, what I purchased at that point. And I remember all the jokes of like, oh, it's an entire box of chaos. And frankly, I didn't truly understand what that meant, but I would chuckle and chive on,
Yeah, well, yeah, that is kind of the fun of it. And I got the Dark Vengeance set too. I think I still have those because you're the Holy Trinity. The Dark Angels, I think, won out way more than the Chaos because you got characters. You got a librarian and a captain, or a master, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
You got a tactical squad, but you also got a customized Deathwing Terminator squad, totally pimped out in Deathwing iconography. You had the winged swords, you had the feathers, you had tons of Dark Angel iconography, you had the Deathwing symbol on there. They were not just your generic Terminators, paint them up as Deathwing. You actually had Deathwing Terminators, and you had Raven Wing bikers. God, my two loves are combining. This is terrible.
So it was cool to see that, to see Dark Angels get some love, because I don't think I've seen anything for Dark Angels come out since then.
They really haven't. And as chapters go, I honestly think they got the short end of the stick a couple of times. I remember being really disappointed in 4th Ed. They got a codex before the generic Space Marines did. And it was sort of the beta version of what became Codex Space Marines for that edition. It was kind of weird. But it was very clunky. It was very handicapped. 5th came around, not a lot of changes. 6th, 7th came around, again, not very much. You had a couple new models. They gave them the Deathwing Knights and the Ravenwing Knights. They gave them a new speeder. They gave a new model for the character, the Master of the Ravenwing. Belial came out a little while after. I think that was in 7th or 8th even. The first Primaris character was launched in, I think it was 9th. I'm not totally sure, but they got their first Primaris Dark Angel, which is lore-wise a big thing if you know the deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
And now, yeah, we have the line. We have the second Loyalist Primarch coming back, and the model is gorgeous. It's absolutely gobsmacking, and it comes with so many options just between the different heads, different stuff you can add on. The Watchers, it's fully Dark Angels. Take 20 minutes in the closet with tissue at your leisure. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, and I did pretty much agree with you. One of the things that I liked about a lot of the Dark Angels models was they all had those deep hoods, the dark hoods. And I loved that they included a head option for Lion, where he had that hood that gave him that ominous presence. You could only see like the bottom of his nose and his chin. It's something, however cliche it is, that was the look that I liked. And when I moved over to War Machine, when I first started collecting and painting Protectorate, I started painting my knights, because I think I had started collecting just the knight exemplars and the knight errants. I started painting them to look like Dark Angels, and I started clipping off their weird Pope hats and giving them hoods. So I had a bunch of Protectorate of Menoth that looked like War Machine flavored Dark Angels, only to turn around and end up painting them red over the green. So, but that's kind of beside the point.
I think that's a thing, and I believe everybody has probably had some relation to the Christmas model experience. You buy them red, they become green. You buy them green, they become red. I think everyone has done that some way or another. This is almost like the 6 degrees of separation to Kevin Bacon. Everybody's included.
Right. Again, kind of going back to our first episode, there was a little bit of speculation that the new box set was going to be Blood Angels and Tyranids, but I said I'm pretty sure that I had said, I bet you it's going to be Ultramarines because they're going to want to capture all the hype of that new video game with Primaris Ultramarines coming down and laying waste to Tyranids. And then I watched the trailer that I think dropped today, right, for the new edition box set. And I was like,
Yep.
it's like the sequel to the new Space Marine sequel trailer.
Pretty much. And they're advancing the story. It's kind of weird because the Lion is the end of the Arcs of Omen. The last book in Arcs of Omen is the Lion, and that is where he's set. The new edition is going to time jump after even that. And the focus is going to be the little gist that I got is that we now have another splinter or tendril or whatever of Hive Fleet Leviathan coming in from the Galactic West. So that's more towards the Terra end of things. And it is creating some new problems for the Imperium. And that is, so we are now in the fourth Tyrannic War.
We certainly cannot suffer the alien to hit Holy Terra.
No, we cannot, because number one, it's not going to taste very good. It's very old, very old. And number two, then where would our beautiful, beautiful lore go? Anyway,
I remember, it's always fun because you talk, in the lore, one Space Marine can kill 100 Tyranids. You watch that trailer and it's rough.
Oh yeah,
people get. I mean, it doesn't look good for anyone. But at the very end, what is it? Mr. Gooey Man himself is just like watching Space Marines die on his computer screen. It's like, man, that's the first time that, to plebs like me who don't read all of Dan Abnett's syllables word by word, or words syllable by syllable, to be kind of like a passive person. Admittedly, not a fan. I tried, and then I didn't. But to see that, even I was like, oh wow, oh. And then Terminators.
They're back. They're back, ladies and gentlemen. And they definitely included that Primaris can wear Terminator armor, which was kind of a big question mark. Belisarius Call could not upgrade the armor. It's already as good as it gets, but it can fit Primaris now. That's the only difference we have. So
I feel like a Primaris would get some serious back problems. Granted, they updated the model, right? So they stand almost a head above the old model, but I believe what I've seen from I don't know if it's a rumor mill. I didn't fact check it, but I've seen where people are like, oh yeah, so this is the same as this, and it's basically the very first Terminator model up to the next Terminator to the one that came out in like 7th edition, and then now to this one. And it's like, yep, they're all the same. It's like,
they did.
Why wouldn't they be?
Yeah, aside from all the lore and the awesome stuff that they came up with, the point was true scale Marines. That's why we have Primaris. Partly to advance the story, yes, that's true, but we have Primaris because enough people finally said, hey, give us true scale Marines. A Space Marine is not as tall as an Imperial Guardsman. A Rhino is not as big as a Chimera. Let's get real.
Okay, so I don't, Bruski, I love you, and I don't want to bring any hate to your channel or your podcast as I am a guest, but I tell you what, there's a lot of people out there that really like their TAC Marines, their firstborn. I love Primaris Marines. Primaris Marines actually got me into Warhammer just a little bit. I remember, man, I nosedived straight into Shadow War. I loved it. I'd never played Necromunda up to that point. People were like, oh man, if you love this, you're gonna love Necromunda and Kill Team. And then I played Kill Team, and I was like, yeah, this is legit. And then the Primaris Marines, I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are sweet. I had TAC Marines. I built a whole bunch of them, but I wasn't invested. I wasn't the long-term guy who had been playing for 10 years at that point, who had amassed 1,000 TAC Marines. I had a couple at the time. A couple of friends gave me some TAC Marines. As a matter of fact, it was Grey Knights. Speaking of Space Marine chapters that got the shaft, where's my Grey Knights? I do love Grey Knights. Anyway, I remember taking some Primaris Marines, and I'll see if I can't find them and send you some pictures. But I took some Primaris Reavers that I took, and I could be wrong here. I remember reading in the lore something about Grey Knights kind of having like an Errant Knight sect that would go out and hunt demons. I took some Primaris Reavers and then kit bashed a whole bunch of Grey Knight stuff onto them and gave them like long tabards and stuff. I can't remember exactly where I was going with this. Dang it. Oh yeah, we were talking about like Firstborn and Primaris stuff. I love the Primaris, and I think that was the other thing that I read is that Firstborn and Primaris is going to be one stat block. So that way, as part of their rules simplification enigma, was there's no longer going to be a separation between your regular attack Marines and your Primaris Marines. Is that correct?
I have not seen that. You could very well be right. I didn't see that. I know, jumping a little bit ahead, because I want to circle back to one point there. The idea of 10th there, GW is sort of, this is one of those moments where it appears like they have listened to a lot of the fan commentary, be it on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, different places, and they're addressing the fact that yes, 9th edition rules became really clunky, really bloated, really hard to keep up with. And they have also, and this is the part that really has me, this is the game changer for me. Okay. They are making the rules free. Woo! Let me say that again, just in case you had to change your skivvies there. They are making the rules free. You can buy a codex. You can buy the books. You can get those for lore and all the other good stuff for collector's purposes. You can do it just because you want to, and that's what you've been doing for 8 editions now or whatever. But you're going to be able to just download data sheets and cards, and they're simplifying it to a really simple number. You're only going to need 3 or 5 of these things to have a whole army worth. And you can buy data cards if you want something a little more high end. You can go buy a set of data cards for the army, or you can buy the codex again. But it's you don't have to anymore. And this is, I don't want to point it out, but there are obviously websites you can go to where you could find all the rules for all the models as they currently are in 9th edition. And you're basically going to get the same thing now provided by GW. I could not believe that.
Yeah, dude, it's been long enough. I'm happy for it. My gripe is that what took you so long? How many game systems? And we're going to talk about this in a second when we talk about things that you should know getting into the hobby and how do you grow your gaming group. I'm sure we're going to come right back to this, but how many game systems have their rules for free that you can find? One, because people are constantly uploading those books online for free. I mean, you have Battlescribe. I mean, I think I played I don't know, 20 games of 8th edition just for fun because the rules were available to me on Battlescribe.
Mm-hmm.
And all I really needed to know was the delineation between the different phases and all that. But other than that, everything was there.
Right.
So it's about time. I'm glad that they finally did it. I can no longer stand on the pulpit of I'm better than you because I released my rules for free. And that's a good thing. I once again asking for free rules. So
we are once again asking for free rules in GW games. Well, we got it, ladies and gentlemen.
We got him.
And for me, I mean, my bigger thing, and keep in mind, I've been playing since 3rd ed. I've seen changes. I've seen much more of a progression than some people, who are just newly getting into it. And I am not knocking you guys in the slightest. This is not the point. The point is I've seen more change. I've seen more how it used to be and how it is now. And my biggest gripe was that you needed a rule book, and then you needed a codex, and now you needed a points value book, and now you needed a GT book, because every 6 months, the main rules and the main competitive formats change. And you have to buy all this on top of your minis, on top of your paints, on top of your tools. And they're not as cheap as they used to be. Your 3rd edition setup, okay? Your rule book was still about $50 USD. your codex was 15 or 20 and lasted you the whole freaking edition. That's it. You didn't have to get 3 more of them. Like, okay, fine. There were a couple special flavor armies. If you wanted to play Salamanders, if you wanted to play Black Templars, if you wanted to play Armageddon Steel Legion, yes, you bought the Armageddon Codex for a whopping $10 because that's how much that was. If you wanted to play Assassins, you spent $10 on another small magazine-sized book, basically. But that was it. None of this. Okay, good. I've got my rule book. I've got the GT for this season. I've got the Arcs of Omen 1, 3, and 5, which all have special rules for the army I decided to play, all at the cost of well over $150 just in rules. No. And we are done with that now with this new change.
And it's about time. It's such a welcome change. I do feel bad for all of the Cadian players because I think they were the last one to get their codex. I feel it came out like an hour ago, it feels like. But
yeah,
leave it to GW to release a couple of brand new shiny sexy stuff and then say, hey, by the way, there's gonna be a new edition. We'll see you again tomorrow when we release these books.
But if you think about it, that's very much in their playbook. They did that with what was it?
Votan. Votan was so OP when it came out, right?
As an army, yeah, but I'm talking about the edition change.
Yeah.
Votan had so much fan backlash because the army was so tournament broken that it was literally day one DLC. That happened with the Votan, that happened with the Book of Rust. Battlezone Karkardon or whatever it was, Book of Rust, day one, they were like, nope, sorry, we're changing this. It was like you have books on the shelves and you're already saying it's invalid. That to me was just absolutely new. But
what a tough place to be in as a business runner, a business owner. What a tough place to be in. But please continue. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. We had an edition change, and I can't remember if it was 7th to 8th, 8th to 9th, but it was, good Lord, what was that book series? It was campaign books, very similar to what the Arcs of Omen are right now. This was all of the lore of Gilliman coming back, Craft World Bealtan being wrecked or sundered.
Well, I remember, I always like to say Robert Guiman. I came back during 8th edition when they first introduced the Primaris. And they had some pretty cool books coming out at that time. But I remember even towards the tail end of 7th edition, man, they had some gorgeous books.
That was it. I am really struggling. Someone help me out with the name. Throw it in the comments or something below here. But there was a series of books right at the tail end of 7th, and it was not. They had started this before they announced 8th, and then they announced 8th, and all those guys shifted over to the new data slates, the Index Astartes, Index Xenos, Index Hereticus, all those temporary get you by codexes, and that was it. But it was the exact same thing. You had 6 or 7 really awesome books. And suddenly it's like, okay, you're in 8th edition, whole new rule system. You got to use these new books to use them. Like the same thing happened. The exact same thing happened.
I just did a quick little Google search for it and just the codexes.
Psychic Awakening. That's it.
Yeah. Oh, Psychic Awakening. Yeah, I totally dropped out by the time that started becoming a thing. I liked 7th edition rules. They were just fine. I think I told you last time I played with a dude that totally cheated, and the guy that was running the store was like, "Oh yeah, no, that guy cheats all the time." I was like, "Jeez." But
really?
Yeah.
You could have freaking told me.
But what a time to be alive. 40K Games Workshop is going the route of free rules, and it's a good move. I'm excited for everybody who's into 40K, and I hope that the change isn't so abrasive that they can't navigate their way into the new edition. And if they can't, man, there's so many good alternatives. You have Uncle Adam always talks about Space Weirdos. If you want a more skirmishy game, you have one-page rules. One-page rules has rules for any GW model you have and more. There's a lot of good games out there, and there's a lot of free options. Just go out there and the important thing is that you play. I there was a joke between me and my brothers where it was just like, man, 10th edition Warhammer's coming out. What's the changes? And I think the first question we asked each other was like, well, how many games of Ninth did you play? Well, well, one. I think I played one. Oh, okay. So then don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You're not there's going to be so many changes from 8th to 9th, from 8th to 10th, from 7th to 10th that it's not going to matter. It's going to be a different game for you, probably.
It's a whole new ball game, and it's, again, they're making it simpler. I didn't digest all these, so don't quote me, but I mean, your stratagems are going to be simpler. You're going to have most of them listed out as a generic sort of rule section of themselves, and then you'll have a couple army specific ones, but I do mean a couple. You're not going to have, zillions of them per individual army. I guess the army composition chart, the force organization, whatever you want to call it, for detachments, that's been simplified as well, so you don't have so many zillions and zillions of options without losing the flexibility, from what I'm told. They've just made it really user friendly. They took the bloat down. They made it a lot easier to get into and think with, and not lose your mind in just trying to play a game versus the competitive nightmare that it became by the end of 9.
And I don't think that's a bad thing. I was watching Commissar Gamza's video on the 10th edition release today, and he's got a little bit of vitriol for the low attention span people and wanting to play simple versus complex games. And I'm like, well, I think there's a time and place for everything. And frankly, as a working man who puts in 48, 50 hours a week on top of trying to write my own games and run a hobby homestead, when I get a chance to play, I don't want to rifle through books. I just want to play the game, especially if it's beginner friendly and I could teach my son or I could teach my wife how to play, and we can just get some dice rolling.
For sure.
There's a time there's going to be a time when I want a really crunchy game, and it's going to be on one of those days where it's like, it's a snow day, work is canceled, and I'm like, okay, I want to get as many models on the table as possibly can, and I want to hard knuckle my way through some, but this elitism of my simple rules versus my AP history college textbook level of rules. Play the games you want, and I hope you find the players that want to play those games.
Absolutely. That I couldn't have put it better. That's absolutely right.
But I'm sure we could go on this all night. What was our next topic? We were talking about
I think we wanted to roll. Yeah, we wanted to roll right into, I think, like techniques and tips for someone getting into the hobby newly. Like, okay, good. Now we, right on the heels of 10th launching, like, okay, good. Maybe you're listening to this and you haven't played games, or maybe you haven't played Warhammer before. Maybe you want to check this out. What can we tell gamers that would actually help them have an easier time? What are some of the tips and tricks you've gotten? What are some of the hacks you've learned?
Okay, so step one, find a wife that's willing to have children, and then make your own gaming group. That's step 1 and 2. Rinse, wash, repeat for as many players as you want. If you don't have that type of time or resources, number 1 is find a rule set that you enjoy playing. People are gonna find out if you're a faker, and if you're trying to play a game that you don't really enjoy, they're not going to enjoy it either. You're not going to be able to teach a game that you don't enjoy, not to a degree that's going to want people to have people come back with. And like we were talking about with 40K becoming free, 40K is the most ubiquitously played game across the world over. There's no shame in wanting to play 40K. If you can afford the model range, cool. If you can weasel your way in with proxies, like I said, 1-page rules. If you can afford a $170 printer and a $30 bottle of resin, you can have a 2,000 point army. Granted, I don't know what the points are going to look like for 10th edition, but for current edition, 9th edition, 2,000 points is like the standard tournament ready army points. You can have a 2,000 point army in 130 bottle of resin if you could buy the $179 3D printer, which most are plug and play. But step number 1, find the rule set that really tickles your fancy, gets you excited to play, and then 2, source models in a cheap way, and then worry about buying new box sets.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And obviously 3D printing is changing a lot of things in the gaming world. And it makes it a lot easier and more accessible for people who, okay, you don't have a store near you. You don't have, such great shipping options or whatever it is, great. The internet is open. There are STLs everywhere. Make your own,
Yeah. And like I was saying earlier, paper cutouts. There's a lot of fellers out there who just who post pictures that you can easily, save and crop the image and make paper cutouts. If you can even just find a friend that you could play with, that's a good start. Find out that this is something that you actually really like, without breaking your bank or breaking your I was gonna say schedule. There we go. your time bank. Don't break your time bank. Don't break your schedule. Don't break your bank. See if it's something that you like. You can push paper pogs around with your buddies until you're like, oh yeah, no, this is something I could really get into. Buy a couple of eBay rescues. Give a shot at painting, because a lot of people buy a whole bunch of models and realize that they don't ever want to paint. And that's cool too. But if you're the guy who's taking on the onus to build the club and get people out, it's gonna be a little bit of a rough go if you don't have good looking terrain and good looking minis, because that really captures the imagination of people. But if you're just looking to casually do it, your wife, your best friend, one of your children that can pick up complex rules.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good points all. Good points all around. And I think one of the things I would throw in along possibly more general lines is, before you start, really define for yourself what your purpose in that game or in that hobby is for you. And I'll get a little more specific here. I was watching a Twitch stream earlier. I'm going to mess up her name, but I think it's Shady Nasties. And she is on Instagram, and she has a sister's army. And I totally missed the boat, because she's into 2 things right now. 1, reading Horus Heresy, and 2, just building and painting models. She has never played 40K a day in her life, and she's just collecting minis and is happy as a clam. She does want to learn eventually, but that was not what got her into it. She just wanted to build minis. What I'm getting at here is, if your purpose is to, if you just want a fun game at the skirmish level and you just want to play with your buddies, you don't need to get super professional terrain. You don't have to have all the best models and best paint jobs. You don't have to make something that's going to stand up to a power gamer type army. You don't have to buy an apocalypse size army to play a skirmish game either. Like, it's just, you have to be true to what your purpose is. Maybe you just want to do the modeling aspect of the hobby. Maybe you are one of those competitive guys, like, what, I want to be the guy, going to GTs and taking home the trophy, and I want to be that guy. Okay, that will determine then what is required of you to play or get into that arena. Maybe you're a guy that's just playing in your basement with friends or with yourself. You're doing a War Budgies, and you just literally want to make some content and really show off and have a fun time narratively. Okay, these all require different things. But if you don't know that going in, if you're kind of like, well, my friends play Warhammer, I'm going to play Warhammer. How are they playing? What are they going to do? And then what does that translate to you doing? And I've both been and seen someone come a cropper when that's not really thought with. So I guess you would almost say manage expectations to some degree, but actually think with what it is you're trying to do there. And then that will dictate what you do in the hobby and what you get, and save you a lot of, potentially wasted time and effort on things that you're not interested in as part of it.
Yes. Yeah. Man, you really nailed it with the, and I mean, that's not just wargaming. I mean, I think that's everything in life. Determine your purpose for doing anything, because at the very least, you're going to have something to aim for.
Yeah. you're not wrong, and I'm just going to come clean about it. That is a part of. I use a certain management technology, and a big part of it has to do with the scale of items that you can. This is usable for anything. You're right. Is what I'm basically trying to say. But the senior point, the thing you really have to have down is the purpose of the activity or the thing or the action, and that will determine all of the other factors. If the purpose of your being a gamer is to have the best looking models out there, well, then that means you're going to invest in paints and brushes and airbrushes. You're going to take hours and hours and hours learning to really turn out an eye-catching, well-painted, well-displayed, well-techniqued model. You're not going to have volumes of them very fast. You might become a commission painter, but that it's going to dictate everything. The purpose of what you're doing behind something dictates what you do in that thing. And that is something that, Patty, just back me up here. How many times do we go on Facebook or Reddit or any of these other places and people are asking, what should I buy? What should I get for my army? What army should I play? What faction should I play? How should I play this game? What game should I get into? What paints are for me? How often do you see that?
All the time.
Same. And the answer I always have is, well, let's step back a minute. What's your purpose in the game? What's your purpose in the hobby? What are you trying to do? Is the first thing I'll ask these guys.
Oh yeah. And if your purpose just isn't as easy as crushing your enemies and hearing the lamentations of their women, just go home.
Yeah.
But no, and it like you said, it's something that you hear all the time, and for a lot of good reason. The barrier for entry for a lot of our hobby, when D&D first came out, and most of it was theater of the mind, based off of Gary Gygax's chainmail game. There wasn't a whole lot of barrier for entry. I think you were able to pick up that box set for maybe $10, and the books were going for a couple of bucks each.
Yeah.
But these days, with the host of miniatures, the host of rules that some, like I said, up until this point has been a huge barrier for entry in themselves, if you wanted to do it legally. That's the barrier for entry. Nobody wants to waste their dollars, especially these days with cash being so tight. So it's never a wrong question to ask. I never get tired of answering it. I never tire of seeing it, because one, this hobby has brought me so much joy. It's one of those things where I can share it with all of my friends. I can do it by myself. I can take it on the go. I share it with my family. So whenever I see it asked, I gleefully answer.
You're absolutely right. The economy is a thing, whether we like it or not. And people do not have the same kind of, for the most part, disposable income they had 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And, besides that, things have gotten more expensive, and it's people are watching dollars. And I can't pretend, and I'm not going to think that that's not part of the thinking and simplifying the game and what other manufacturers are doing. And if you look at them, they're somewhat making smaller things an option. Kill Team. There is a new Kill Team, by the way. There is a new box for Kill Team coming out at Adepticon. I don't quite remember what's in it, but there is a new
I've got
Kill Team
some gripes
box.
about that. I'm sure I'll circle back to.
We can circle that wagon, set that bitch on fire. That's fine. But yeah, it's a thing, and scale is another thing to think with. It's, if I had to say another point to sort of select and choose what you're doing, is think with how big or how small a game you want. Everybody loves watching an apocalypse scale game, thousands of points, hundreds of models aside, hours and hours and hours of work. One turn moving is literally 2 days long. We all love those, but does anyone want to put in that work? Does everyone want to put in that work? Hell no. Not everybody's there for that. That is not everybody's cup of tea by a long shot.
Right. And, you don't need to spend a whole lot of time on YouTube to find tabletop minions and Uncle Adam talking about the glory of skirmish games, which I totally agree with. going back to finding a rule set that you really like, if that rule set offers a complete and fun skirmish size experience where you can get away with buying a box of miniatures, or maybe if if you can afford or put together 2 boxes for you and a friend to play with, that's the way really to starting really small like that. Maybe splitting those 2-player box sets, which there are a bevy of options for as well.
Oh yeah.
But I am, so this is going to sound super hypocritical. I never endorse anybody selling their miniatures. Every time I've ever let go of miniatures, I almost immediately regretted it. However, if somebody has decided and is selling those miniatures, buy the secondhand miniatures. That plastic needs love too. You're gonna get so much more bang for your buck. And especially if you're just getting into this hobby, you can get some of those eBay rescues and find yourself with so much more than you need right off the bat. I mean, even if you have to be the two players that have Space Marines versus Space Marines, that's not a big deal. The fact of the matter is that you're sitting down to play the game.
Yeah, it's Horus Heresy is there for a reason. But it's and I think going back to Commissar Gamza is as much as he has vitriol against GW and their current situation, he has an old video about getting secondhand models, stripping them down. He gets a big Rubbermaid tote, loads it up with that generic purple cleaner from Home Depot, and just throws in like 5 tanks and 100 miniatures that he just eBayed. Happy to make that into an army for himself. And, anyone can do that too. It's like, okay, good. You can't afford the real deal, but you want those miniatures. Okay, fine. There are plenty of people between eBay and I'm failing to think of the name here, but there's other like apps for just getting rid of used things or selling things.
Facebook groups. You can go on.
Yeah.
You can go on to Facebook groups and you can find your 40K resale, War Machine resale, Malifaux resale. I mean,
yeah,
it's a good place. And again, I should say, I love Gamza. It's just I have no qualms with what he says. I don't agree with everything that he says, but I love his gusto about everything. I like how he takes his hard stances. And you talk about somebody who's ready and willing to make stuff happen. The guy would do those eBay rescues. He'd make terrain out of Pringles cans and trash and meat, and some of his trash terrain was really good. Watch some of those videos. You want to talk about like, just save your food containers. Last episode we talked, we're gonna take that Coke can, save your food containers. Between eBay rescues and Coke cans, you've got a table to play on and play with.
Whether it's what he intended or not, if you wanted a game on a budget, I can't think of a better inspiration and a better option to go to really see how to do it. And that, Gamza is one of my inspirations. I respect the guy as a spine. He can speak his mind and say what he's, really thinking. Does not care about the algorithm and all that jazz. He's just doing his thing, which again, I admire the hell out of. But he's got an awesome trash terrain series, 69 videos long. And he's doing everything from towers to bunkers to wrecked buildings to the Terminator-esque Necron in a study lab jar.
Yeah, the Necron in a jar.
Yep. He's got so many. He had Tyranid spawning pits. He had lava bases. He had portals. He had statues. He had desert bases. He had destroyed buildings. He had a power reactor from a Titan. I mean, I could go through and probably rattle off everything, but right now, if you need inspiration on terrain, or you need to know how to get going and just get an army stripped on the cheap, go see his channel, Commissar Gamza. YouTube.
I think he goes by just Gamza now. Just YouTube Gamza. Gamza.
It might. If you just search Gamza trash terrain, you will find him for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, now he's got his Patreon and a whole bunch of 3D printables as well for a decent price.
He's got the best greater demon of Nurgle ever. You can get Buttermilk Bob. You son of a bitch. You know, you can. He's also great. He's very eclectic, and he has no problem, you know, voicing his concerns quite literally as the characters and as the people he's running into. It's kind of hilarious to watch as its own little sideshow.
He's an acquired taste.
He's an acquired taste, but he always goes down smooth. Gamza, we love you.
We love you.
We love you, Gamza.
Man, did we hit that topic? I got techniques and tips to learn as a new gamer and hobbyist, and then growing your gaming group. Again, we kind of ran into the same problem where, you know, wet blending works really good for paint, but as a podcast, we can't seem to separate.
Hey, they haven't taken us off the air, so we must be doing something right.
Yeah, come after us, FCC. Pirate Radio.
Talk hard, steal the air.
So yeah, techniques to learn. One, eBay rescue is a technique in and of itself.
Yeah.
Turning your trash into terrain, heck of a technique to learn.
And fun.
And then as far as painting goes, man, I tell you what, you can go a really long way if you know how to if you grab a specific color primer and then know how to make a complementary wash. You can go pretty far with just that, depending on what miniatures you're going for.
Yep. Main colors. I mean, number one, if you just think with a simplified palette, I'll get into this later at some other point. I'm actually doing a challenge where someone on Instagram did a challenge. She literally pulled out, she has a just ginormous bag of dice, and she pulls out 3 dice. You have to pick 2 of the colors those dice are at random. You have to pick 2. You can use those, you can use black, you can white, and a metal. And that's all you can do to paint a model. And she's kind of challenging you to just use that limited palette to paint your model. But that is a really valuable skill to have, and you don't need zillions of paints to do that.
Correct. And you don't even, I mean, I think earlier we said getting good model paints. Don't be afraid to use craft barrel. I think Miranda from WarGamerGirl, she used craft barrel paints for years on her stream before I think Monument Hobbies started giving her some freebies to show off on her channel.
Yeah.
So,
and she did that joke video on that. She was like, best painting advice ever. And she literally she's unboxing a Kador or a Mark III starter box, and she just rips open the bag and the parts fly all over the place. And she builds the model and slaps it down. She grabs a 2-inch paintbrush and just jams it knife style into a blob of straight craft paint and just stabs it into the head of this, I think it was a juggernaut or a decimator. She's just and it's no way in hell would that actually by itself come out right. But yes, you can use craft paints. You can do that. You need to thin them down, but that's all. I've done it. It's totally doable, people. You can absolutely work with craft paint.
Mm-hmm. And then our other topic was growing your gaming group. So kind of talked a little bit about it. Number one is, like I said, finding a rule set that you actually want to play. If you want to play 40K, or if you got some kind of reprehensiveness, some hesitance to getting into it, that's fine too. Find a game that really sparks your joy. You'll find somebody who even reluctantly will give it a try. I think that worked out for one of my friends who had never played a tabletop game in their life. I think at this point I had never even taught them how to play Dungeons and Dragons, but I was like, I really want to play Frostgrave by Joseph McCullough. And he's like, I've never done it before. I was like, okay, well, how about you give me 10 minutes. And then I set up the battlefield so that way you instantly got into the action instead of futzing around with the initial movement. A lot of games are kind of bogged down in that first turn with unpacking your dudes and getting that first placement advantage. No, I don't mess with all that. I just, and that, going back to Mutants, a lot of getting people into the game is getting them rolling dice and removing models from the board, if you want to use the words, murdering them savagely. People get really excited. I think there was a Penny Arcade comic where one of the dudes had brought home some 40K and he's like, this is dumb, this rule book is forever. And he's like, well, there's chainswords and you can hack people apart with chainswords. He's like, oh, I'm so in.
Yeah.
That's what's going to get people excited. And if you can sell a game that you like, you're going to find at least one person to play, and then it can almost become a virus in a good way. People are going to be like, man, those people are having fun. Those bastards.
Jesus,
I want to have fun, and then they'll join you.
Yeah. What I would bolt onto that is if it really helps if you're willing to be the teacher, the buddy, the provider to start with. Not everybody's in the situation where you automatically have 2 or 3 people right with you that all want to play the game and you guys can split a box set or something. Sometimes you're the guy that gets the ball rolling. And the thing, for me at least, they made it really easy. I mentioned back in our first episode, I got in because I had a fad buddy who was like, every month he had something new to try.
DBZ card game.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Okay, cool. Or, Diablo 2. All right, man. A month later, I'm bored as hell. And okay, we're gonna play 40K. All right, fine. But to his credit, that was at a friendly local game store, and he had his Space Wolf army and he had a Chaos army that he wasn't using. He said, here, you're gonna use my Chaos. And he's like, you're gonna take this, this, and this. He already had the armies figured out. We had the table there, he helped set everything up, and he's just like, okay, good. Now you do this. Now you move everything. Good. Now you shoot everything. Now, if anything can bonk you on the head, now you do that. Okay, fine. He was willing to walk through it. He had the models right there. I didn't have to think about any of that. If it was, I want you to play 40K. Now you need to buy these models. Now you need to paint them. Now you need to do this. Like, no, that was done. I had a demo to go right there. And if you're really just starting from you and you can't necessarily go to a store, you have to be willing to get that ball rolling yourself and to provide, to teach, to support in that way.
Yeah. And if you can't find a space, be willing to host. There are options of games out there where, but let's see, I think was 40K played on now. It's not even a 6x4 anymore. It's like a 5x3.5 or something silly like that. And then you have Kill Team that's played on. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you could. Kill Team, I believe, was a 2x2, which is very easy to.
2x2.5. I could be wrong, but I remember it's a really weird dimension size.
Might be. And 40K proper scaled up in points. As you got bigger, the table got bigger. You could play 1,000-point game, a combat patrol game, or 1,000-point game. I think you could play on. I think it was like 36 inches by like 40 inches or something. So not quite 4 feet aside, and one slightly bigger than the other. It could go up to a 6x4 table. I think it was.
I do think in 9th edition it went from 6x4 to smaller. I remember walking into my friendly local game store and seeing that they had the 6x4 tables, but then they had like masking tape off where the new board dimensions were. I think War Machine plays on 4x4. I think Frostgrave plays on 4x4. Malifaux plays on a 3 foot by 3 foot. Mutants I think plays, let's see, it's a 5x5 grid with each cube being 3x3. So 15 by 15.
Yeah.
So
just over a foot per side. Yeah.
Clean your house. Invite the dude from work over for a beer and say, yeah, I just want to play a game.
Just conveniently have your Lionel Johnson model fully painted out on display. Yeah, that's my buddy Lionel. I painted that shit. Oh yeah, it's a game. You want to play it? Come on over.
Go toss some trash models into the Fruit Ninja machine blender thing, and then put a lion on the table. Be like, this is plastic crack. Here we go. We're doing this together
Right.
now.
Yeah,
So
dude, snort. Yeah.
that's a good way to grow your hobby right there. Just straight to the main.
Yeah, exactly. Just get right into it. Like, dude, you will be broke. Just
So
accept it.
even if you live in a really small town, because I did. We lived in Indianapolis, which was one of the gaming hearts of the US. Everyone goes for Gen Con and such. And then we moved to Libby, Montana, and it was a 2-hour drive one way to get to the nearest game store. Kitty and I kept it alive. We became friends with another couple, and bam, we got them into it. And we were playing some games, and then we went active duty, went to El Paso. Nobody was playing War Machine, not a soul. There was these whispers of a time since gone where I'd walk into the game store looking at the War Machine models. And so funny story, whether or not you want to bring it up, but Richard, our friend that came up in our personal conversation the other day, he was the first one to look at me and be like, "Hey man, you want to play? Are you into War Machine?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, me and my wife play." And he's like, "Nice. We haven't had a War Machine player come in a long time." And I was like, "Sweet." So Kitty and I like revitalized the War Machine community out in El Paso for some time before I left and came back up here. I was so close to getting a War Machine group up here, but then as soon as I started gaining some momentum, it was guard and then working 70 hours a week, and it died, and I felt bad. And it does. I mean, make no mistake, starting a gaming group takes a lot of work and dedication. And until you reach critical mass, it is a constant wash, rinse, repeat type of motion. You're going to work at it. You're going to get one person, then maybe 3 people, and then a 4th person. You're going to try to hold a tournament. You're going to get 6 people to come out, and then something's going to keep you from going to your next scheduled game day, and then it'll seem to fall apart. But
yeah,
don't ever lose hope. I mean, if anything, a lot of these people are invested in the game just as much as you. It requires time. It requires monies. They want to play. They need somebody to be the leader. And until somebody stands up and does it, and hopefully they're relatively charismatic and easygoing, you're going to get a gaming group.
Oh yeah. If you're kind of standing around, waiting for the cavalry, look down, you're in the saddle.
You're in the saddle. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Like, okay, quit waiting. You want to do it. Sometimes people, you may be that guy. You may be that guy or gal who is just like, I want to do this. There's nothing around me. That's totally fine. And I'm going to tell you, it is not impossible to start an activity, start a group. I mean, look at what we have with social media these days. You can go on Eventbrite. You can go on Facebook and throw a rock in any direction with the search bar, and you'll find, different groups, different meetup groups, different hangout groups, and you'll be able to, find some people and interest them in that kind of thing. It's really not hard to do. And from a goodwill perspective, not even necessarily your home, but there's other possibilities as well. Like some people have businesses and they've got decent spaces, and with a little question they'll be like, hey, would you mind if I pull a footloose and host this thing here, blah blah blah. And some people are willing to do that. Funny story, during the pandemic, my church, my building actually had some pretty stringent sanitization practices. We would literally spray everything down with an antibacterial, and the gaming stores around here were not open. And I had reached out to a couple and said, look, I've got a building that we are literally sanitizing on the level of a hospital. If you guys can't be open, but you want to host some games or you want to host some nights, I would be more than happy to have you here. I was in a position to say that. I could, I had some authority and I could say, yeah, I can do that. Definitely reached out and just offered a space. So you never know what that kind of thing will bring if you're just willing to, recognize that you're going to be that leader. You're going to be that person getting the ball rolling for others. And you're willing to take that on. You know, you have to get a little creative, but you can absolutely, from nothing and from nowhere, start a group.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever played in your church space?
I have.
Heck
Little
yeah.
known facts. A bunch of us are actually closet gamers. We had an annual Christmas party. I did BattleTech this year. I just did one mecha person, sort of a free for all, make alliances as you choose and break them when somebody upgrades and gets an assault mech on the board. You know, I did that. We played the Pathfinder card RPG game.
Mhm.
3 or 4 of us would play that every Saturday.
That's sweet.
There's actually someone right now who's getting into D&D, and she's asked me to help make her battle mats. She wants some grid battle mats and asked, "Can you do that?" And I said, "Yes, I can." Here you go. So
What a hero. You want to was one of the games that really worked for me to get people excited about the idea of tabletop wargaming. Gaslands.
Ooh.
Are you familiar with that one?
I have not played it. I have definitely heard of it. I could not tell you all the mechanics of it, but I do remember hearing that it was relatively, A, it was very cool. B, people said it was kind of like Mad Max on roids. And
Yeah.
very, very easy to get into from what I was told.
So, man, I must have cached the book somewhere. Oh, there it is. Mike Hutchison. That's the writer's name. So Mike Hutchison is the creator of Gaslands. There's currently Gaslands Refueled, and it is a tabletop war game that you play with Matchbox or Hot Wheels cars. And so I've taken a couple of cars that I've modified myself with some leftover 40K and War Machine bits. And I would just and you don't even have to do that much. If you're lucky enough to find one of the official Mario Kart Hot Wheels boxes,
Ooh.
Man, you can have an absolute blast. So I printed out a bunch of templates, which you can find easily on the Gaslands Facebook group. Printed them out, glued them to cereal cardboard box, and then I think the only rule that I house ruled, I think the Gaslands rules say that within the game there's templates. So there's templates for like a short straight, medium, long straight, hairpin turn, tight turn, gentle turn, so on and so forth. The rules say if you pick up a template, that's the template you have to use. I forego that rule for people who are first trying to play. It's the same thing as like there's no pre-measuring. Well, you know, we let people who've never played a tabletop game before to pre-measure until they get used to it. Yeah. Same thing. But people get really excited about that stuff. You know, a lot of people grew up and they no longer have the Hot Wheels race tracks that they used to get paddled on the butt with, but they still want to have fun with Hot Wheels cars. I was like, yeah, we're gonna play Gaslands. It's easy to pick up, and because the miniatures are so easy to source, I think people really identify with it. And then you can get them into all sorts of stuff.
Oh yeah, those intro games. It's I hate to call it, you know, like a gateway drug, but it pretty much is.
It is. Don't. There is no shame. Do the line of just take that resin and slice it up.
Yeah, I started with Gaslands and then I got into 40K Apocalypse. Now I gotta tighten the size of myself in the living room.
That's right. I drink a gallon of resin before I start my day.
I only do 2 thin coats of everything.
Yeah, like Gaslands is a valuable game. I mean, Mike was pretty genius, and I think you could even pick up the Gaslands Refueled rulebook at Barnes and Noble.
Probably. I want to say I've seen it a couple of times.
Yeah, worth it. But I mean that kind of rounds out the 3 topics that we have.
I think we're at a good point. I think we've got things pretty well covered here.
Yeah, my heart feels warm and fuzzy.
I feel satisfied with myself that I've had my time with Paddy and he's had his time with me, and we can all go and meet up again and talk about something else.
Well, I'm glad I had my time with you instead of my way with you.
I think you, me, my fiance, and your wife fully agree.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
So again, thanks for having me. Thanks for making the time. Thanks to the audience for listening to us ramble on for a little while.
Thank you for being here, Patty. I know, sometimes it's really a labor of love to just find the time and make it go right with me, but I really appreciate you being here. And I'm really looking forward to Mutants. Again, ladies and gentlemen, hitting download link sometime later on the 24th, later today. Mutants, biggeekemporium.com. Check it out and support my boy Patty, and have a blast with that game.
Oh yeah, it'll be ready for you to download before you head out the door. Look over the rules while you're on lunch break, and then it'll be there for you the entirety of this weekend to give it a play. And if you download it and you like it, I would love to see a review. If you download it and you read it, I want to hear about it. If you downloaded it, read it, played it, and you loved it, I want to hear about it. If you hated it, I want to hear about it. But I definitely I look forward to just hearing even one person saying I got a game of Mutants in.
Boom. Absolutely love it. Well, there you have it. We'll have the link in the description again. Check it out. And until next time, we're going to keep these podcasts up. And yes, we are going to open this up to guests. We Patty and I could definitely stand to have a few more people around. So if you want to partake, please let us know. Reach out to us, message, comment, whatever. But until next time, thanks again for being here, Patty, and everyone at home. You guys have yourselves a very good day.
Good night, everyone.